Tell him about the time we faced.
All right. Well, as I remember.
At Avenger headquarters.
Because united, the Avengers are strong.
Welcome to the Marvel Evolution Show with myself, Andy Stead.
And I'm Jarian Gibson.
And I'm Alex Straub.
And we have been joined today by Erik Woods. How are you doing, Erik?
Good. How are you guys all doing?
Very well, thank you. Very well. So, Erik, we're going to get stuck into talking to you very, very quickly.
Okay.
But we're just going to do some pleasantries first, as we always do. So,
Sure.
Alex, how are you, my friend? All right.
Good. Yeah, it's been a long week, but I'm glad it's the weekend.
You know what? I feel exactly the same. It seems to have been a really long week this week, and today has gone as sort of dragged out this week. So it's not a bad thing because it's Saturday, so it's all good. But yeah, it's been a long one today. Jaren, how are you doing, mate? All right.
Yeah, doing okay.
Excellent.
It looks like there is an issue with the stream though, chat again, so I can't see it.
Okay. What? Just the chat?
Yeah, just the chat.
Okay. Fine. Well, I've got the chat on my phone right next to me. So Roxy's there. Hi, Roxy. How are you doing? Hopefully you've got some good questions for Erik once we get going. So, and everybody else that's listening or watching live, then please do drop us some questions as we go. Oh,
Sorry, I'm just making sure our streams are good. Sorry, that was me.
that's okay. We'll let you off, Jarian. Well, I've nearly finished Daredevil season 2, the Netflix Daredevil season 2. So there's some such good moments in that show. I forgot how good that season is. I'm now on the fence as to, I'd always thought that season 1 was better than season 2. And now I'm kind of thinking, I don't know. Actually, did season 2 pip it in the end? There was some great moments in that. See, some great dialogue in season 2 between lots of different characters. Between Punisher and and Matt, and then some of the other dialogue that was going on between Foggy and Karen. Some really good stuff in that show. And I'm looking forward to seeing season 3. Erik, so I made a confession a few weeks ago that I hadn't actually seen the season 3 of Daredevil on Netflix, and I got cut down. To be honest, I got cut down quite badly by these two because I have seen some other stuff that wasn't quite as good, and they were sort of
Iron Fist.
All right, they're doing it again. But yeah, so I'm in the midst of rewatching all of the I say Netflix, quote unquote Netflix, because it's not even on there anymore, is it? But the Defenders saga, as it's now been labelled on Disney Plus. So I'm in the midst of rewatching a lot of that stuff. But yeah, so that's all been good. Erik, we're gonna talk to you today for a majority of this show. And we've brought you on for a very specific reason, to talk about the scores and the soundtracks and the music of the MCU. So, Erik, before we get started, do you want to sort of introduce yourself? Let us know a little bit now about your sort of background and all that kind of stuff, and then we can just get started chatting about specifics.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very long story, my journey in film music, but I think people came to know me through the radio show that I started in 1996 at my college, and I had that show for 10 years. And my son was born, and I decided I can't do the show anymore live. It takes a whole pile of time to prep and do, and it's my weekend, and that's when the show was on. So I decided 10 years, that's it. I'm gonna cut it short. But I decided that I was gonna keep doing a show online in my own time. And so that's what I was doing. I was streaming the show before a podcast was a thing. And then I was trying to get around the legalities with music on podcasts and things of that sort. And I thought, what the heck, I'm just going to do it anyway. So the Cinematic Sound Radio became a podcast in 2016, I think. And it's still the same type of show that I've been producing for 26 years now. And, we actually did work out licensing with the Canadian copyright people here. So we do pay fees every year to the composers and things of that sort. So I feel good about that. And that's a step in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, I've been a film music fan I think my whole life, first time I really noticed film music was back in 1983 when I saw Return of the Jedi. Came home just singing Star Wars music and then, drawing. I love to draw as well, drawing X-Wings and TIE fighters and just, singing along to Star Wars. And so I was about 8 or maybe 7 or 8. And so, but I didn't really get into kind of collecting or really paying attention to it until high school. And that was like 96 or 95, 96. And then it just, once I had the show, it just kind of blew up from there. And I started the show with about 75 albums that I had. And it's ballooned to close to 7,000 albums in my library now that I get to
Wow.
pick and choose from. And it's been quite a journey and discovering music that I never heard before and people sending me stuff and whatever. It's, yeah, it's been an education. And, but I'm just so glad that I've stuck with the show. Many times I've wanted to quit, but, it's still a fulfilling, project. And, it's kind of ballooned up into this network. I've got 10 different shows with a whole bunch of different hosts and things of that sort. So it's still a lot of fun.
Wow. We was talking. We had our first anniversary a little while ago as a show, and I was saying that it was a achievement in itself to get to a year, to be doing
Yes.
this thing for a year, every week for a year. I can only imagine what it must be like to go for that length of time that you're talking about for your show. It must feel amazing, and the commitment that you've made to it.
Yeah, there are definitely peaks and valleys. There are times where it just becomes so overwhelming. And, you have your 9 to 5. And then the last thing you want to do is, and I work out of this office. I've been doing that for the past 6 years. And the last thing I want to do is come back in here and start podcasting. And so, yeah, there was a time where I took 7, 8 months off just because I just burnt out and, had to reevaluate things. But luckily I had a good team behind me who were kind of keeping the show going. And I came back and I decided to rejig things, and I still overproduce everything each and every time. I still write way too much in my scripts. And, it's tough for me to stop doing what I've been so used to doing for the past 26 years. But, 1 year is a wonderful achievement. I remember my 1 year anniversary, and that seemed like it took forever. And now I've come to 26 years. It seems like it's gone by just like that. And there's so many amazing highlights that I've had over that time. And I'm so glad I didn't give it up. And so I hope I just keep on going with it. But, I think you're going to have to, you have to rejig things. You'll have to slow down. You'll have to reevaluate things. And that's just sort of the process of going along with it. And I'm not sure how long you guys plan on going, with this show or whatever you guys do, but you go as long as you want. And then maybe you move on to the next topic or subject or whatever. But yeah, I'm still glad I'm still doing this. And also the fans are a big part of, the reason why I keep going and the reason why I stay inspired. There are days where I just want to be finished, and then I get a wonderful email from somebody in God knows where saying they've listened to the show for the first time. I'm like, oh my God, okay, I can't let that person down. I'm just going to keep on going. So,
Wow, that's amazing. We've got a very small group of very devoted listeners, live listeners or live watchers, and it's brilliant to have them because they input with. Hopefully, we'll get to hear from some of them today. They input in the show while we're here, while we're live talking. Obviously, the show can be listened back to after we've recorded it, but it's great to have that interaction between the listeners and ourselves when we're talking about things that come up. And again, I think, like you said there, though, the listeners, the audience is a real good motivator to keep you going, isn't it? Yeah, I think that, that's an amazing achievement. And I think you must have seen a big evolution. I think you just mentioned that, you started this before podcasting was a thing.
yeah.
And if it was that long ago, it was almost the birth of the internet almost.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think there was only a handful of film music shows like around the world. I know that there are maybe 2 or 3 that might be older than my program. I know there's one in somewhere in Europe. He's been doing his show for about 30 years. But I got addicted to this through listening to a guy named Ford Thaxton. He's a CD producer now, but he hosted Soundtrack Cinema in Seattle. And I remember hearing about him broadcasting the show over the net one day. And I'm like, I don't have the internet at home. So I asked a buddy, I said, at midnight, can we turn this on? I want to hear somebody broadcast film music on the radio. I've never heard it before. And so when I heard that, I'm like, okay, I've got to do that myself. And so I was in my first year of college. And so the next year I wrote out my plan and, told the station manager, this is what I wanted to do. And he gave me some airtime. And yeah, the rest has been history. But I mean, it's interesting to talk about the internet. I basically broke the internet at our colleges, at the college for, I think it was 3 days, because I, for some reason, got the world broadcast premiere of The Phantom Menace. And so when I got that, I think about 3,000 to 4,000 people tried to join a internet stream that was at most supposed to hold about 120. And then once that kind of blew up, the internet just stopped. And, we got a nasty message from the internet service provider and whatnot. It's like, what are you guys doing? My station manager's like, it seems like we're playing stuff that people want to hear. And he's like, well, it was a special occasion. We had the world broadcast premiere of the Star Wars album. And so, yeah, I mean, we broke the internet, which is one of my favorite stories in the history of the show. So, but yeah, the evolution of not only the internet, but even soundtracks as a whole, it's been absolutely fascinating to see where it's gone.
Fantastic. We've got a little message here from Ian Clark. I guess
Yeah,
Ian.
Ian. Hi, Ian.
Yeah. And Ian has said, hi, everyone. Ian here from Edinburgh. Erik is the mage of movie music, and I'm honoured to share Monday nights with him and my friend Daniel Herring, talking scores and movies on the Batman show on YouTube. Looking forward to tonight's chat. Nice to have you on board, Ian. Thank you very much for your comment, and feel free to drop us some questions or drop Erik some questions. Obviously, you know Erik quite well, so you know what he might be able to answer and what you might be able to provoke him to sort of some details. So obviously, thank you for your background. Thank you for sharing that, Erik. That was really interesting to hear. We're a Marvel show. We
Mhm.
talk about Marvel stuff. Predominantly, we talk about the MCU, but we do throw in, comics and collectibles and all sorts of things. And for a long time, personally, I've been wanting to speak to somebody who knows much more than I do about the scores and soundtracks of Marvel movies. And so it's great to have you on because, just going to pick your brains a little bit and see what your more experienced ears
Sure.
can bring to the conversation. So just as a general sort of starting point, what are your thoughts on the scores, not necessarily the music used as such, like the existing music used, but the original music used in the MCU as a whole? Do you think it's found its sound yet? You spoke about Star Wars, and there's the sort of, the themes to Star Wars or the themes to Indiana Jones. We kind of know those. We can hum along to those. If you sort of said to stop somebody in the street and said, do the Star Wars song, they'd hum it to you, wouldn't they? Do you think we've got to that point with Marvel yet? The Avengers theme, Alan Silvestri's stuff. Do you think we've got to that stage yet?
It's interesting. I was walking my dog about an hour ago and I thought, man, are they going to talk about this? And so I've been thinking about it for quite a while. And I was like, I've got to go rewatch that Every Frame a Painting video where they talked about the Marvel Symphonic Universe. And then there was, I think, Dan Golding from Art of the Score out in Australia did the response video and all this sort of stuff. And a lot of the points that came up in that video are valid. So they were talking about, the use of temp track and maybe obvious scoring and things of that sort. But I mean, the big thing was what's iconic about the MCU. The MCU is a difficult thing to kind of hammer down because trying to compare it to Star Wars or let's say Indiana Jones or the Lord of the Rings or, any of those other franchises. Yes, you're going to have a plethora of main characters in those movies, but the difference with the MCU is that each main character has their own film pretty much and a series of movies. And so you got this difficult task of juggling themes. And I think the biggest mistake the MCU made sort of right off the top was not having some sort of musical continuity. And that's not meaning hiring the same composer over and over again, although that would have been amazing. Like just picking one guy and scoring 30 films would have been crazy. we get a whole wide variety of interesting scores. I'm saying, and they're some of them are really good, and some of them contain incredible thematic material. The problem is what's memorable. And the big thing is, I think there's only one theme that's come out of this, and we all know it's Silvestri's Avengers theme. And the thing is, that might not have come back in Infinity War and Endgame if Danny Elfman had brought it back in Age of Ultron, because Brian Tyler certainly wasn't bringing it back because he had his own theme. So that's a whole other thing. The problem is that we have multiple themes for the same character. And that started right off the bat with Iron Man 2. John Debney was brought in, who was a frequent collaborator of Jon Favreau, worked on Zathura and Elf. Those guys were amazing together. But for some reason, Debney somehow got dropped when it came down to Iron Man, and they hired Ramin Djawadi. I'm not a huge fan of his score, but he came up with an Iron Man theme. Now, what they should have done was taken that theme, and that theme evolves over the course of the entire MCU. The reason is that sticks with not only the character, but the mind of the audience. And so, I mean, just go back to something, let's say like Indiana Jones, and you hear that theme in Last Crusade. That's the third film, but it's absolutely thrilling. It's part of him. Or you've seen the 25th film in the James Bond series. James Bond theme has pretty much stayed exactly the same. It's that jazzy theme. It's the screaming trumpets. We all know what that is, and that hasn't really changed. It's evolved in different sounds over the years, but that theme, we all know what that theme is. But what's the theme for Iron Man? Iron Man, I think, has had 4, maybe 5. I know he's had a main theme for 1, 2, and 3. I know Giacchino came up with his own theme for the Spider-Man films. Not sure what Silvestri used in his scores. And I think Tyler might have brought it back for Age of Ultron, but it's just an absolute mess. What's Captain America's theme? Is it the first one that Silvestri did? Or is it the one that Jackman did? Which one is it? So the only theme that really stayed constant, consistent, the only one that's memorable is the one that was constantly reused throughout the Avengers, throughout Age of Ultron, throughout Infinity War and Endgame. And again, going back to Danny Elfman, if he wasn't brought in, that theme was dead. We wouldn't have had it for the other movies unless, I mean, who knows if they would have hired Silvestri after Age of Ultron, because that was an absolute mess. So the big thing, again, yeah, it's musical continuity, and that's what really sucks. Although, I mean, we've got some great themes even after other composers have worked on it. I think Iron Man 3 is the quintessential Iron Man theme. Tyler's theme is the one I think is the most memorable, and it works the best. It combines that kind of rock and roll Hollywood star character with that symphonic traditional hero theme, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. But I think it came 3 films too late. So I mean, how many themes does Thor have? It's an absolute. Wait, I mean, Thor could have like 5, maybe 4. I don't know. I mean, do we know? And so when you go and ask somebody, you know, hum the theme from this or hum the theme from that, it's not the same as it is with other franchises. And so the MCU really has an identity issue music-wise.
Yeah. So I like what you said about the James Bond thing, because it is fundamentally the same now as it was in the 60s. It's like the same, it's basically the same song. It's been slightly modernized, but it is the same theme. That opening theme, you expect that to happen, don't you? So I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about the latest movie that's been released. I don't know if you've seen Wakanda Forever yet.
No, not yet. No,
Okay.
I've heard bits and pieces of the score.
I'm not going to go into there and talk about the movie at all. But the opening Marvel, you know, the Marvel logo that comes in.
Yeah.
So and I don't think this is too spoilery, Alex, Joan. If I say what I'm going to say, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? So you know, when that Marvel logo comes in and there's the music that plays over it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no music that plays over this one.
Oh wow!
And all the images within the Marvel logo are all of Chadwick Boseman.
Oh wow, that's great.
So it's absolute silence
Wow.
that comes in. So, but thinking about a piece of music that is, you know, indicative of the MCU that hasn't changed, I guess that would be the thing, that piece of music there. But even that
it's changed actually. It's changed once already.
Yeah, it has changed. It has changed. But
So Brian Tyler wrote the original one,
Right.
and then after the debacle of Age of Ultron, Giacchino was asked during the Doctor Strange sessions to do his, and I think that's the one that's the most iconic. Nobody remembers Tyler's. I love Tyler's. He even wrote an entire symphonic suite for that, which is magnificent. But I think Giacchino's is the one that now it really sticks with us, and I think that's also because of the television shows, because that's almost always played every week now, and now that's getting in everybody's head. And again, just keep repeating it. But the other cool thing is that there's so many variations on it, and that's the thing about themes, is that people think that it might just get irritating or grating, but composers are really, really good at creating different arrangements or variations of their themes and music. And so that's why I'm just baffled that producers and directors are just so scared nowadays. And this isn't just in the MCU, of music and themes and making the music, making you feel something with the music. It's just a weird phenomenon that's happened the past 15, 20 years. It's so weird. And it's happened in the MCU. Man, I've had this talk with many film music fans. I'm just trying to think of what happens if the MCU came out in the 1980s, and who would work on those somewhere. And just think about, I mean, if you got Williams and Horner and Goldsmith. I mean, when we did get some absolutely amazing scores from them, and we got Superman, Batman, we got The Rocketeer, The Shadow. I was like, all those are fantastic. But I mean, that crop of composers compared to now, I'm not saying that now we don't have some great composers, but I'm wondering, back then when music was allowed to be noticed and prominent, what would we have got? And would it have been consistent? That's the other thing. I mean, I don't think they'd make 30 films in how many years it's been. But yeah, it's definitely, music and film music has definitely evolved, much like cinema evolves all the time.
You know,
Go on, Joe.
I would say, another constant theme too is the X-Men 97 theme as well. That seemed like it has been pretty constant, from the cartoons, and then when they did it in Multiverse of Madness, when they had it in Miss Marvel, and I think that's the only other time. We heard one more time after Miss Marvel, or was that the last one we heard?
I think that was the last.
Did
one.
Elfman bring it up in Multiverse? I think he might have brought it in when
Xavier rolled out.
Did you mention that? Did you mention that?
Yep. Yeah, when
Okay.
Xavier came into the Illuminati, it played. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and the other thing is that when the other composers that have been writing their own themes, Kamen, Ottman, Powell, it all almost seems to have a same type of kind of musical structure to that theme. Their themes almost sound as if it wants to be that television theme, but they're doing their own thing. And I always found that really, really interesting. I never really looked into it, and I don't think anybody has, but for some reason they all sound somewhat similar to that classic cartoon theme.
And another interesting one that they recently brought back was the one in She-Hulk for Matt Murdock as Daredevil, when they brought back the Netflix Daredevil one. That was a very interesting one to kind of throw in there real quick.
I think that whole conversation there that Jaren and Alex have just brought up there, Eric, I think is really interesting, how they're using those snippets of those recognizable scores within to not only visual, so they're not just visually representing these characters, they're now audibly representing these characters. So we heard it in She-Hulk as well. At the end of She-Hulk, there was a joke. Have you seen She-Hulk?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so long story short, there's a little joke right at the very end where they a robot basically says to She-Hulk that we can't afford any more CGI for you and your character because it's being, the CGI artists are busy on another project. And then it just plays the little flute, Black Panther flute noise.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's in a similar way to, like we said, when Professor Xavier, Charles Xavier comes in on Multiverse Madness, there's just that little X-Men.
Yeah.
There's that little, just they drop it in there. And they seem to be doing a lot more of that. Like Alex said as well, they did it in She-Hulk with Daredevil. They dropped in the Daredevil soundtrack. So you've got these visuals, but now you've got these audios as well, that they're dropping in these soundtracks that we know. I say soundtrack, sound bites. Let's not call them soundtracks. They're just a little sound bite that we know. And I'm wondering whether they're going to start doing that more often. It's a nice touch.
Yeah, and it again, I was talking about the lack of thematic continuity, but when you read online these things happening in these shows, or like, hey, we heard that theme in such and such. I mean, the fans notice it, and why they aren't implementing it, I think properly, is so bizarre. So, but then again, it depends on what composer is working on the show, right? Which I mean, would going to like even DC because like Danny Elfman changed up the themes from Batman and Superman in the Justice League movie that he scored, right? So it's like, so does another composer come in and go, well, you know what? The Incredible Hulk, which did have the original TV theme in it, which I thought was great, but does somebody come in and quote something else like the television series or whatever? So it's like and again, getting back to the whole weird thing about the MCU and thematic continuity is like, which theme do you use? And like Brian Tyler was just kind of cherry picking for Age of Ultron. He used, I think, Silvestri's Captain America music. He used his own Iron Man music, but then I think like I said, he was changing up the theme for the Avengers, which is just like, what are you doing? I mean, there's already an established theme. And then there's a whole thing about composers wanting to come up with their own material because then there's a whole royalties thing. So if they use somebody else's music, you got to pay that person and blah, 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 blah. So that's a whole other ball of wax. And it's just so there's so many complications and so many things that are happening in the MCU. It's just so weird as to, again, which theme are you going to use when that person comes on for that cameo? And, will somebody notice it? Like, I'm trying to think of which film was it that replayed Patrick Doyle's theme from Thor for the very first time in a long time. And I can't remember. It was one of the latest films or even TV shows that played it. And I'm like, where the heck has that been forever? And it's like, and I love that theme too, but it's like, why did you decide on Patrick Doyle's instead of someone else's? So you're cherry picking.
I'm wondering whether they need somebody to oversee all of the soundtracks, all of the music that goes in. So there is that continuity within the whole of the MCU.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. And that's the other thing is like directors, have their favorite people that they'd like to work with. Although I've seen collaborations absolutely get destroyed because of the MCU. I forgot the director on Doctor Strange, but his frequent collaborator was Christopher Young. We all thought Christopher Young was going to write the score to that, but then it became Giacchino. So whose decision is that? Favreau not being able to work with Debney on Iron Man 1, but got to work with him on Iron Man 2. So what's happened? Who's in charge? I mean, directors usually pick their own composers, but now with all the higher ups and all the fingers in the pie with the MCU, you just, did the Russos pick Jackman? But then why didn't they pick him for Endgame and Infinity War? They could have. I mean, they went with Silvestri. They never worked with him before, so it's just an absolute mess.
Were you referring to Derrickson for the first?
Yeah.
Doctor Strange movie. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like you say, there's higher ups. There's other people making decisions as well that might not necessarily be what the director would make if it was solely down to them. We've mentioned him a couple of times, and I know Jarian will be more interested to hear a little bit more about your thoughts around him. Have you seen Werewolf by Night, the special that was directed by Giacchino? Obviously, somebody coming out of that composer's chair and into the director's chair. I said around the time that the whole thing felt like a performance, that it felt like a musical performance, the whole show. And I think you can really tell that it was somebody who understands environment, in regards to the noises and the sounds that were being used, because I think they really blended nicely. Like it was, the whole thing was a lovely full package of sort of experiences. It was a feeling rather than just a show. So I don't know what your thoughts are on Werewolf by Night and Giacchino moving from composer to director and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, and right off the bat, I mean, I've met him many times. I got to know him pre The Incredibles, so I was at the last 3 Medal of Honor sessions. No, that's not true. Because there was another one before that, or there's 2 more after that. So I was at Underground, Allied Assault, and Frontline. I was there for Secret Weapons Over Normandy and Mercenaries. So I got to know him. And, at that time I was making my own movies, my own, no to low budget films. I almost got him to score one of them. He said he would do it. Then he had to move on to The Incredibles. So it's like, which one do you choose? But I've talked to him many times, and I got to interview him, and yeah, I knew he was a filmmaker. I knew he made films as a kid, and I knew there was an interest there. I mean, his main interest was to be a filmmaker, but he would play around with music and score his own films, and then he eventually, I think he studied at Berkeley. I mean, he didn't actually go to Berkeley. I think he studied on his own time and got to be a great composer. And the composing thing again just continued while he's working at Disney and then at DreamWorks, and just a chance happening where one of his demos was heard by Spielberg, and he was picked for the Lost World game, and and then Medal of Honor, and J.J. Abrams played Medal of Honor, heard Giacchino, got to do Alias, Lost, and all that sort of stuff. So I know that Giacchino is kind of like that. He's a filmmaker first, and then the composer. Although he's an absolutely incredible composer, but I know that the thing that is important to him very much is the story. The story's first, and so if the score has to complement those images, and I think the thing about Werewolf by Night, again, I think he's directing in more of kind of a musical way, and you can feel the rhythms.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And Spielberg is very much known for that. I think John Williams even commented that on Raiders of the Lost Ark there was a definite rhythm to the editing in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he could pick that up, and that's how even a lot of the films that Spielberg has done, John Williams could pick up on those rhythms. So, and you're right, yeah, it felt like a performance piece. It felt like a piece of art.
Yep.
And that's what's so different about this compared to everything else. And they basically gave him, I think, carte blanche to do whatever he wanted to do, and it turned out really, really well. I was surprised at how good it was. But another thing is, watching that behind the scenes documentary that was directed by his brother, you could see sort of how much of a kind of a fish out of water he was. He knew what he wanted, but he knew how to also collaborate. And that again comes from his experience as a composer, because I mean, you're not collaborating with your director. You're never going to be on the same page and give the director what he wants. And so, yeah, I thought it was quite a unique project, and I'm glad that Giacchino finally got a chance to direct something. I just hope that he doesn't get stuck in the MCU. And again, no offense to the MCU. I just hope he's then able to go off and kind of do the things that he wants to do. And this is kind of like his demo piece. It's like, hey, look, I can do this, and let me go off and work on something else. But if he gets an MCU project, that'd be great. But I mean, he's still composing a pile of scores, so I don't know where he's finding the time to do this. So
I hope we do get to see him again on the MCU side, whether it's Man-Thing or another on the monster side, because I think he would handle those great. I actually enjoyed his flow and how different Work by Night was versus other things in the MCU.
It fit the tone in almost every scene. The music always did. It was perfect. It was spot on.
And not just the music, but the noise.
Yeah,
the sound design was incredible.
The atmosphere was just was spot on. And it reminded me, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we was talking about those so really sort of cult films like Blue Velvet and Eraserhead, and those kind of really strange movies that have that kind of industrial sound behind them, and they've just got a hum. I guess they've just got a hum to them to the movie, and it's very atmospheric.
Yeah,
and I think that's exactly what Werewolf by Night had for me. It had that atmospheric feel to it, and I think, like you said, it was a performance, and I think everything about it was important. Whether it was the music, whether it was the sound design, whether it was everything was very carefully thought about. You could tell.
Yeah, and I think what's so great about it was I mean, it's considered a feature film, but it was like 50 minutes long, and but I mean, it's all kind of meat, no filler, and that's the thing I loved about it too, right? Because you could be doing a 2.5 hour movie about that, but I mean, who knows? What type of boring conversations you might have to film or whatever, but it was just, it got straight to the point. And like, I even like about 10 minutes into, I'm like, what in the world is this? Where's the story? Oh, there we go. Okay, we're developing this, and now we're in. It's like, what's up? Oh, blah, 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 and just kind of happened. And it was like, wow, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And, just got to the point. And that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, the length was
Yeah,
was spot on.
perfect. They
Absolutely
should do
spot on.
more of those.
Yeah, and I think they are. I think they
Yeah.
are going to do more of those.
Much like
Good.
the What If series, which I thought was, I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of the rare Marvel TV shows. I watched, I think, 3 of them, and that one I thought the time for those were perfect. The running time, absolutely perfect. Didn't need to be any longer.
Yeah, and Jarian said a long time ago actually that they don't need to be restricted now or confined. Sorry, should I say? They don't need to be confined to a specific running time because of the slot that they've got on a certain channel
Right.
or between one scheduled program and another. It's like, well, if they're streaming, they can do whatever they want, pretty much.
Their
Exactly.
platform. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's your platform. We've just got a couple of comments here. We've got Roxy's just saying she loves listening to Marvel soundtracks and Lord of the Rings soundtracks. And we've got RMC. He said Werewolf by Night has been one of his favourite things in Phase 4, even though it's just an hour special. Thought he did a really great job all round with it. Yep, we agree with you there, RMC. We've got Jamie Cloud there. Hi, Jamie. How you doing? And she said if it fits into the conversation, she'd love to hear Erik's thoughts on the WandaVision intro scores. Now, I don't know how much knowledge you've got about the WandaVision intros.
Like, are we talking about the television songs and intros and things like that? Yeah. I mean, that's just crazy. I think this, I'm sure Christoph Beck or again, whoever's working on that, it's like, yeah, we got to create a new jingle every week instead of using the same one. And I'm like, you guys are nuts. That whole show was nuts. And I actually enjoyed it. Again, that was another one, but that was a long form show where I was like, what is this? What are we getting into? And then for me, it really paid off. And I really enjoyed that series a lot. And I enjoyed what Christoph Beck did with it. I mean, those end titles that I would stick around and listen to that every single episode. So, but yeah, the creative team behind the music on that show, they should just win all the awards. It was just what a feat. And I can't imagine how much fun they had doing that. Trying to find the right sound for each and every week for that was quite a task.
I kind of imagine that working on that project would have been like a real blast, actually. And it would have almost been like each week was almost like working on a completely different project because the feel to it was different and the soundtrack to it was different. The costumes were different. I should imagine even the cinematography was different. Everything about it would have been different from week to week. Obviously there had to be some sort of continuity in there, but I should imagine it was very fresh every time you went into work. Every time you worked on the new episode, it was very fresh.
Yeah. I mean, then again, just to having the mindset of, the time, like, where are we this week and what type of music do I have to write? And then it's like, oh, well, do I know what the sound of, 50s television was back then? So what's 60s television? What's 70, and that's a whole other research aspect. The amount of work that went into it, is mind boggling. But I thought that was a wonderful musical feat. Definitely one of the highlights of MCU music for me.
And it's definitely hard to blend all those decades together and make it something that moves so smoothly, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Again, that's one where I didn't see where it was going. And then when we got, for me, the big payoff with that speech with Vision and, that moment where everybody knows where, you're just crying at the end of it and you realize, oh, what that's what this is about. It meant something. And I was like, wow, this is a different thing for the MCU for me. It's not like I didn't feel anything back then, but it was like, it was very comic booky, but this one really was dealing with some serious subject matter. And I think this was one of those shows where it was like, we're just going to throw things here and see if they stick, and you guys can kind of do what you want because we've ended this one phase of the MCU, right? So now where are we going, and let's see what we can do, and what's the weird thing that we can do. And I was like, I applaud them for doing something different, but being successful at it. I was just entranced week after week watching this show.
Yeah, I think the MCU's done a lot of that in the last couple of years, actually. Just not necessarily throwing everything at the wall and see what sticks, but certainly been testing the water to see what works, what they can not what they can get away with. That's the wrong word, really, but just to see what audiences enjoy. Jamie said that yeah, she was disappointed that WandaVision didn't win more awards actually. Yeah. So okay, away from scores, looking at soundtracks. Just correct me if I'm wrong there, Eric. When we're looking at scores, we're looking at original music that's written for the project, and when we're talking about soundtracks, we're now talking about existing music that's now used into the movie. Yeah, just wanted to make sure I was getting my language correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got a whole different language for that. I mean, soundtracks are just soundtracks to me, but I always call anything with like the Forrest Gump soundtrack or Guardians of the Galaxy, I call them song tracks.
Okay.
But I've always considered soundtracks to be just the music from the movies. And I never realized until like 2 or 3 years ago that people call soundtracks the songs and just score. I'm like, no, they're all soundtracks. But anyway, that was just
fine.
Yeah, it's what I get what you're saying though. Yeah. So yeah.
So looking at the music that's the non-original music that's been used in Marvel movies, there's been some cracking stuff that they've pulled from the records that they've used in the MCU. Where do you think they've hit, and where do you think they've missed when they've pulled stuff? And do you think that they've pulled stuff for certain characters? I mean, the obvious one I think would be to start with, as you've just mentioned, Guardians and the sort of stuff that they've done with that.
To be totally honest with you, you know, the soundtrack thing is something I don't necessarily pay attention to, and there are many other people that are far more experienced and experts on that type of thing. But I will say that, I mean, Guardians was a groundbreaking movie when it came down to use of music in comic book films, modern comic book films, because now everybody's doing it, and they are most of the time not doing it right. They're just throwing in random tunes. The worst offender was Suicide Squad, that first one, where it was just one song after another, and they played for like 15 seconds, didn't develop at all. And it's like, here's next character, 15 seconds. It's like, what is happening? There were like 8 songs within about 5 minutes. Whereas Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, that again, I'm not familiar with all the songs, but I remember whatever the opening song was at the beginning of that film, it sticks with you, and that becomes part of the character. And that's, again, people remember that, but it just played for a longer time than just a little snippet. But it was also, I think, the choice of songs helped with the narrative as well. That's the other thing with music supervisors, is you just can't throw a song in there and go, oh, everybody knows that one. If it doesn't mean anything to the narrative, and if it says like the character's name in one word after about 7 lines, like that's so dumb. But it's got to fit with the story.
Well,
and so I think Marvel's been far more successful with that. And again, they are leading the way. I mean, Guardians was so successful. I mean, incredibly successful, that so now everybody wants to do it, but just people aren't. A lot of them aren't doing it right.
And a lot of that stuff that you would find on a Guardians like soundtrack is a song that you would actually find on a real cassette tape.
Right?
Like so it kind of pairs right up with that. Like, hey, Peter Quill's got a Walkman and he listens to this on the Walkman. Like,
it's
era specific, and again, that's another thing you got to think of. You just can't throw. I mean, you could throw in. It depends on when the time is, I guess, but that one's era specific. You got to really pay attention to what songs you're going to pick.
Yeah.
And that always takes me back to one of the best song tracks I think that was ever created was Forrest Gump, and that's a tough one to manage. But if you can look at that and say that's the kind of gold standard, and then use that for your films, I think that's where the songs play an important part of the narrative, and it helps tell the story, but also puts you in that time frame as well. And so Guardians, both films did it brilliantly. And those songs, like when you're listening to them in the film, they stick with you.
Yeah. I like how you brought up Forrest Gump there, that like you said, it's because it's a journey through time, isn't it, Forrest Gump? And that they do assist you through those times with music, just to remind you that there's different things going on, and you grow with the movie, don't you?
Yeah. And if you grew up with those songs, those are nostalgia hits, and that's just like, if you can hit that too, man, you've got the audience in the palm of your hands.
Yeah, sure.
So
I-
you a quick question real quick. So you thought the Suicide Squad music was a mess, but what were your thoughts on Peacemaker if you watched that series?
No, I haven't watched. The
Okay.
thing about I haven't watched when I'm watching TV. It's like I got maybe one or two series on the go, and so if I'm, let's say, I literally just finished Better Call Saul last night, so I'm like one and done because I can't concentrate on a million more. But then Rings of Power came out. I'm like, okay. I have to watch it because I like the music so much and I wanted to hear in context. So now I've got two. Then I'm like, oh my God, Handmaid's Tale is coming out one more time. So now I got three, and it's like I'm trying to juggle that. I was gonna go on another show. They wanted me to watch episodes of the Clone Wars. This brain can't handle that much. So yeah, I'm very selective in what I watch with movies, but especially with television. And if I got one show, I'm sorry, everything else has got to, go on the back burner. So yeah, I don't watch a lot of the MCU shows.
So what about trailers though? What were your thoughts on how they approach music in the trailers? Because I think they've done pretty well with how they've positioned some of the music and what they pick for some of the trailers to kind of make impact as part of the trailers.
Yeah, I think lately they've understood that certain themes are going to resonate with an audience. I have a big problem with trailer music as a whole. It become just this cliched trope of the exact same thing over and over again. And I used to love watching trailers, and I hate watching them now because there's no creativity behind it whatsoever. It's the same cookie cutter trailer that you've seen for years. But I mean, I grew up again 80s, 90s, and watching some amazing trailers. I mean, where's the movie voice gone? You don't see that anymore, right? And I used to love that sort of stuff. Like they used to tell little stories. There were 2.5 minute little stories on their own, and they used to create, use music from all sorts of films, and it was really great. But now it's sort of the same sound, or it's some trailerized version of a specific theme. So the same thing with Endgame was super successful. That trailer was amazing, but because you have that theme, right? Everybody knows that theme. It's going to bring you into the theater. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of modern day trailer music now, and it almost is headache inducing for me, and especially with the sheer amount that you see in theaters nowadays. I mean, I'd rarely go to the theater, but I mean, 25 minutes, folks. Let's start this movie. And I used to like watching trailers. You'd be like, okay, which one are we going to see? And maybe see 2 or 3. And I'm really annoyed by it. So I know that didn't answer your question, but sometimes they'll use, sometimes they will use themes from the films, but just they're so vastly different and overly simplified that it almost becomes grating to somebody like me who really pays attention to those type of things.
Rewinding back just a couple of moments, just back to the Guardians thing. And for me, as you could play some music. If you played this soundtrack and you played the music, I would very quickly know exactly what movie it was from. If you played the Pulp Fiction soundtrack without telling me you were playing the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, very quickly you'd know you were listening to the Pulp Fiction soundtrack.
Yep.
And I think Guardians falls in that same category for me. If you started playing the Guardians soundtrack, okay, one song, you'd go, this is from Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, even though it's been in millions of other places before.
Right.
And then the next song, and you'd go, I know exactly what I'm listening to now. I know what to expect. I know the next song. It's almost like all of those songs were by the same artist, even though they weren't, because Guardians brings them together, doesn't it? And I really like that, how the soundtrack typifies the movie and the movie typifies the soundtrack as well. So they really do go hand in hand. Tim here has said, hi Tim, how you doing? Tim said that the Guardians music, and this is actually the point that I just made. Actually, he said the Guardians music is much more a part of the story than any other MCU movie, and he said Ragnarok was close with it too. So that's kind of what I was saying, Tim. Yeah, I kind of agree with you.
I will say that I don't know what your opinions are on the last Thor movie, but I absolutely loved it. Again, I am not super close with this series of films, and my favorites are probably not your favorites because I just like all the weird ones. So that's why I like Thor, because it was just so, I'm not really attached to it, but I was just like, this is great. But the thing is, I mean, Guns N' Roses is my favorite band of all time. And I mean, my God, I got 4 Guns N' Roses songs in that. And I couldn't lost my mind after all the kids got the powers. And I was like, and I usually don't get affected by songs, but holy crap, that was for me. I'm watching that movie and going, You guys made this for me. I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about it right now. And I was like, yes, yes. And I also like the fact that you get that sort of style in the score as well. They play hand in hand. It's a real rockin' score by Melimod and Giacchino. But those songs were just perfect for me. Absolutely
Yeah.
perfect.
So
And that
RM
resonates with me.
yeah, RMC said exactly the same. He said, "I've always loved how they start some movies with classic rock songs."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there you
Yeah.
go, sweet child of mine.
Yeah.
Yes.
That plays
Yeah.
straight away.
I was in. You guys are that's already 4
You
stars
got
out of
me.
5.
Same.
When they put Immigrant Song in Ragnarok, my jaw hit the floor
Yeah.
because every time I've always listened to that song, I've always imagined like Thor fighting frost giants or something. So to
Yeah.
actually see that on screen, I was like, wow, like I can't believe that like they actually used this in a Thor song. I mean, a
I
Thor
thought they
movie,
were gonna
excuse me.
miss out on that. And then when they finally heard it in the trailer, I was like, finally someone
Yeah.
woke up and said, "Hey, you know what? This
Yeah.
is Thor." And
It's
yeah,
gonna
it was,
work,
it was
yeah.
fantastic. And it works. But again, you got to have a good music supervisor who really, really understands, again, the narrative. And you're not just throwing songs in willy-nilly just because they're popular. And that's what, again, you brought up Tarantino. Tarantino has introduced me to a whole wide plethora of different musical genres that I would never have listened to, and even scores that I had never heard before, because he's dropped them into his films. But
Incredible.
he understands the narrative and or the importance of the song to the narrative. And that's the key thing about being a good music supervisor in any film.
Yeah, for sure. I think that goes back to what we were saying about Giacchino on Werewolf by Night, where the music just fits so beautifully into the narrative of what's going on at the time.
Yeah.
We've got a comment here from Ryan Weber. Hi, Ryan. How you doing? He said, I really enjoyed the song. I really enjoy when a song score fits into the story so well. And again, he's used Guardians of the Galaxy. He's awesome at mixing that too. And then RMC said something, but I'm not going to read it out because that's going to ruin what I'm going to do in a minute. So, so I'll tell you what I thought I'd do just to finish up the show. Is I sort of prepared a little quiz, and I mean, it's based on music songs, so the song scores. I've got 5. I'm going to try and get my language correct, Eric.
Sure.
So and Alex and Jarian don't know the answers to. Well, I say they don't know the answers. They
I probably don't know the answers.
Again, we'll throw it out there and we'll see. We'll see if anybody listening knows. If anybody's listening, you know the answers to these. Just pop them down. They're not the hardest questions in the world. Eric, we do a live Zoom Marvel quiz, and
Oh, cool.
I've been known to throw out some tough questions. These aren't those ones though. These look, Roxy, stop it. You're ruining it as well.
I've already said it.
All the answers are in the chat already.
To be fair, actually, that one isn't in there. To be honest. Right. Okay. So here we go. So RMC, you should know this one. Endgame opens with what song? Anyone know? Does Alex Jarian know? Do you know? Just say, just nod if you think.
Oh yeah.
Right, you know. If
Yeah.
anybody, yeah. If anybody knows this listening, drop it. Endgame opens with what song? You got any ideas, Eric?
I've seen that film only once, but yet it's still one of my favorite MCU movies. So it's like I got to watch it again, but I need like 3.5 hours. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, then I probably have to watch Infinity War before that. So it's
Of course.
no,
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't know.
No, I don't.
Okay, that's fine. It's and it's already been mentioned here. RMC, yeah, you know, you've got it. It's Dear Mr. Fantasy by Traffic.
No, okay.
Yeah. Right, here you go. Next question. Alt J's left hand free plays when we're introduced to which character for the first time? Any ideas, Alex? You look like you knew for a second there. Alt J's. With my left hand free.
Yeah, I know.
Jarian, I know now.
Yeah,
Anybody know? Come on, send us a message in if you know what that is.
it's in. Here's a hint. It's in Civil War.
Yes, it's in
Mm.
Civil War.
Wow.
Okay, come on, Alex, you got this. Go on, Jarian. Put them out of their misery.
Peter Parker when Stark goes to visit Parker.
Yeah, that's a great great little moment. That. Yeah, RMC got it. There you go. All right, okay. What album does Sam recommend to Steve in The Winter Soldier?
Oh,
I know this one too. I know
Yeah.
exactly what scene it is. Also,
yep. I
Okay.
remember the scene.
there's actually one scene he recommends and one scene he's playing it.
Yes. He's
Yes.
explaining it. Yeah. Yeah.
It-
Jamie's
it's-
got the answer to that.
It's a bookend. It's a bookend type thing from Sam in that movie.
That's a
He'll-
great little moment.
he'll
That's a great
Put
moment.
it on the list.
Yep. In the beginning, in the beginning on the list, and at the end in the hospital.
And yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's putting
Yep.
it in the hospital when he's asleep. Any ideas, Eric?
No.
Trouble Man
Oh,
by
man.
Marvin
Yep.
Gaye.
Mhm.
Okay. What's happening when Jay and the Americans come a little bit closer? He's playing in the MCU. What's happening? Come a little bit closer, you're my kind of man. So big and so strong. Come a little bit closer. Any ideas? Jarian's almost got it.
I think I know what this. I think I remember this one is. I know what movie it is, and I think I know what scene it is too.
We've spoken about the movie. Jamie Cloud. Jamie got the Trouble Man. You got it, Alex.
I think
I'm,
so.
I'm guessing Eric's drawing a blank again.
I'm drawing a blank.
We brought a music specialist in. Come on.
Yeah, no, yeah. I should have. It's a score specialist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got a bunch of podcasts that I'll let you listen to those guys on the next time.
Okay. Go on in, Jarian. What do you reckon?
Is this the Guardians, the prison break scene? No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, no, not quite.
No.
It is the Guardians. Alex,
Okay.
any ideas?
I thought it was from Guardians of the Galaxy too.
Yeah, it is. What's happening?
Jamie's
Jamie's got it in the chat. Jamie's got it in the chat.
Oh, it's the scene where it's just like pure chaos, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember exactly what everybody's doing in that scene.
Is it when the ship crashes and with like all the Ravager? No, that's the, okay.
It's when Yondu and Rocket and Groot are taking out all of the Ravagers, Taser-faced Ravagers with
Oh,
arrows.
in the
Yes,
woods.
He's in the room. No, not in the woods.
No, on the
He's
ship.
in the room.
Oh,
yeah,
on
he's when he's in. Yeah, and he's sending the arrow. He's sort of looking at the cameras on the screens. He's looking at where all the Ravagers are, and he's just sending the arrow to kill them all. And they're
That's
having
it.
the best time in their lives while Come a Little Bit Closer is playing.
I was thinking the prison break scene from the first one for some reason.
That's a good
Yeah.
one. And last one. Scott Lang performs this song while he's on lockdown in his house. He performs it as a karaoke. Any ideas what song it is? Yeah, Tim got that one right as well. Well done, Tim. You got the last question right.
I can
Any
see him
ideas?
doing it, but I can't think of the song.
Do you remember he's playing the drums?
Yeah.
And the drums, and then he does a bit of karaoke. All right, I'll put you out of your misery. It's "Come On Get Happy" by David Cassidy.
Yes.
There you go. So there's 5 questions, 5 music questions that I thought might be a little bit fun. A few people have got some answers right there. We've got Jamie got some couple of answers right. RMC got a couple of answers right. Tim got an answer right there. Just by typing arrow. Thanks, Tim. I just thought that'd be a little bit of fun to end the show.
I got a quick question for Eric though.
Go on.
Not MCU, just anything in general. What's your favorite like intro opening to a movie of all the movies you've seen out there?
The best intro of all time is Superman the movie. It's followed by Star Wars, but there's just something about those flying credits and John Williams's music, and the little bits of interesting orchestration that he throws in. So there's portions in that opening title where you'll see little sparkles of light, and they don't necessarily match the beat of the music, but he adds these little twinkling bells a couple of times, and they are offbeat completely. But that is Williams just playing to what he's seeing on the screen. So I always love those little flourishes that John Williams does, like he runs some bells when Marion's blowing smoke into the Nazi's face while she's in the bar, and those little things where they're very screen specific pieces of music. But Superman, that whole opening title sequence just absolutely blows me away. And but yeah, I mean Star Wars as well, just there's just something about that splash of music, and I can't imagine what it was like in 1977 to see that, because again, I saw Return of the Jedi first, then Empire second, then Star Wars. So I saw it all backwards. But yeah, those ones just kind of lift you off your seat or blow you through the back of the theater. And it's all music and viz. And yeah, Superman gets my vote.
You brought up Star Wars there. RMC said Star Wars. And for me, if you was to ask me that question, Jarian, it would have been Star Wars. There's something about that Star Wars intro, when it's all quiet and then all of a sudden it hits and the words start flying, and you know you're about to watch a Star Wars movie. And this is what we was talking about that thing, about that consistency. You know it's about to happen. You know Star Wars is happening. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I agree with you there, Eric, about Star Wars.
Alex,
Yeah.
what would yours be?
Ooh, I honestly have no clue. I was just sitting here thinking about, like, as a kid, like, I used to watch so many TV shows, and now I'm sitting here thinking about even TV shows that have, like,
yeah.
theme songs that just, like, they've stuck with me. Like, Static Shock had, like, one for, like, every season that I remember. Like, I loved every single one of those, and they did something different for every season, but they all, like, really just carried that tone of the show, and they were great. And, that's a DC show, but old cartoon too. But yeah, I honestly would have no clue what I would choose for something like that.
Thundercats.
Thundercats?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine would
What about you?
mine would be Conan the Barbarian. Just that
Oh,
story, and then how the music comes in. They're doing the sword forging, and then the
Yep.
father's telling the story. It's like I can watch that over and over and over, and it never gets old.
Okay, hang on. I've actually got one, but this is a little bit different. So Halo, the video games, that
Okay.
Yeah.
that thing. Yeah, like every time like I hear anything like that, I instantly think of Halo. Like it's just like ingrained in me now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's
Mhm.
when you hear that piece of music that just instantly makes you think and feel and remember whatever it is that it came from. That's when
Yeah.
you know it's a special piece of music.
Yeah, I mean, nostalgia plays a huge part in that too. And also, the age that you were, that impressionable kind of period when you were a kid or a teenager, those things will stick with you forever. And you hope that you can relive them when you get older. And the problem, I mean, we were talking about beginnings of movies. It's so sad that the main title has pretty much gone the way of the dodo. And they've relegated that now to the end credits. I think it's main on end now. For most MCU films. I mean, those are great sequences, but I miss, watching the first couple of minutes and having like an overture of music play over top of credits and just kind of suck you into that film and then get you started. And that's what I miss in modern day films. And when I see it, on the rarest occasions, I applaud it.
Yeah.
Like the end of Endgame, if that was like at the very beginning of the movie, I think that would have been a lot better when they go through the main characters and the statues things and or not the statues, but the cut scenes.
Yeah, and I think with the MCU, I mean, again, it's a whole one big narrative. It's a real tough thing to kind of like open up one of those movies with a main. But like nowadays, you could probably do it, but everybody just wants to start that movie right away.
Yeah.
And even my kids, when they see a film that has a whole main title sequence, they're like, "Can we just get on with the film?"
Fast forward
And,
it.
fast forward it. Where I'm like, "This is great.
Yeah.
This is so amazing. It gets me into the mood." But I mean, I applaud, stuff like Superman the movie. Love, like even though Star Wars didn't have a main title, it had that crawl. Batman, films of that sort that just kind of sucked you in, or even like the Alien series always had an ominous opening to it, and again, just set the tone. That's what I miss. I don't mind going straight into a film, but just kind of give me something to hold on to, and you could even play with me, like throw me off with some of the music, and so yeah, that's one thing I definitely miss. But as a music fan, that I really miss those main titles right at the beginning. Those are always great.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, another good one to add is Voltron as well. The intro to
Oh.
Voltron.
Yeah, all those kids shows were magnificent. But I mean, Voyager for me, Star Trek Voyager is my favorite main title of all time. And another nostalgic favorite is the A-Team. That one just gets me going.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
nothing. So, but those were always fun. Knight Rider, A-Team, and Airwolf, and
Oh,
those were
Airwolf.
always
You see the
awesome.
helicopter and the music just goes right away.
And all that electronic music and
Yes.
those great themes.
I think nostalgia there is definitely playing.
Very much so. I mean, some of
those.
those shows weren't very
Yeah.
good, but
Yeah.
man, those openings, I would never skip them. I want to watch it. It's like, if I even missed it, I'd be upset. And
Grace Mirror, and here goes another one. Or Grace American Hero.
Yeah,
Another one. Yeah.
they all just
The-
stick with you.
The Justice League animated show actually had an intro. I don't even think it had one word in the entire intro. It would just like start with the Justice League just slowly walking, like transitioning, like you would see them like almost in the shadows, like moving forward, and it would just play this slow song. and then it would like highlight kind of like each one, and that one always will stick with me. Like as soon as I hear that song, I'm like, where is it playing? Like, you know, like so.
It
My-
just
my-
gets
my-
you. It just gets you in the mood.
My
Mhm,
son, my 8-year-old, he's always with the Avengers Assemble theme song.
Nice.
mhm.
That one, he loves that one. He's always singing that one.
Yeah.
Like you said, when you're at that young impressionable age, you pick it
Yep.
up.
Absolutely.
Right, let's wrap this conversation up then, guys. Erik, where can our listeners find out, listen to your show or join your groups, or where can we find you?
Sure. The easiest way to find me, cinematicsound.net. It's the webpage for my podcast, and you can then find out where you want to listen to it on your favorite podcatcher. But again, just search for Cinematic Sound Radio and you will find it. I'm all over the socials. Just look for either my name, Erik Woods, or Sin Sound Radio on Twitter, Cinematic Sound on Facebook. I'm not really on Instagram, but I might have to be just in case Twitter completely blows up. Because I might have to find another place to go, but yeah, I'm all over the place, and yeah, if you just want to find a really good movie music show, like it, and we play scores, and you're interested in learning more, we have a whole great variety of different programs to, from video games to archival releases. We have interviews, anything and everything you wanted. I one of my favorite shows I did back in February was a 6-part tribute to John Williams, and it's one of the best things I have ever done. And so if you're interested in hearing almost everything that he did, I highly recommend you check it out. It's a long listen. And another one is my pal Jason Drury put together a audio documentary right after James Horner died, and it's a 3-part series, and it is one of the best things I've ever heard. So those are 2 shows I highly recommend. If you want to start somewhere, that's probably where you want to start.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on, Erik. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been nice to talk about the music of Marvel with somebody who's obviously very passionate about scores and passionate about soundtracks. Jarian, Alex, you got anything you want to just say just to tie up?
No, thank
Nope.
you. And hopefully next week we'll have some of the hiccups fixed with the chat and some of the streaming places. So I've already pinged the hoster, so hopefully that's fixed next week.
Fantastic. Fixing those technical issues. Look, and we've just had somebody, that's Robert Daniels. Do you know Robert Daniels, Erik?
Yes, I do. He's in town. He's has his own radio program called Visions and Sound, and he's also host of my Obscure Scores show.
There you go. He's just
Rob's
said,
great.
Just said hi. He's just said
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah,
For the last 5 seconds.
yeah, you've caught the wrong end of the show, Robert. Thanks for dropping a message by anyway. You can catch us back on YouTube and all the other places, Jarian. Yeah.
Yep. YouTube, Twitch, Facebook page, the groups, Trovo. Yeah, I think that's it. Twitter.
Superb. Fantastic. Erik, it's been a pleasure. Thank you once again. And thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Erik.
Take care.
Thanks.
Why don't you tell them about the time we faced
All right. Well, as I remember,
at Avenger headquarters?